Hello, everybody. Welcome to week one of POT 3003, Intro to Political Theory. My name is Eric Hodges, and I'm going to be the instructor for the course. Hope you guys had a great summer. So we'll start with intros, right? I like to try to replicate the classroom environment as much as we can in an online class, and I know it's hard. And sometimes you really miss that classroom interaction that you have in an online class. So I try to do the best I can in this class to make it sort of at least try to get some of the benefits that you get from being in a classroom. But to do that, what's the first thing you do usually when you go into at least a smaller class? You do introductions, right? So that's going to be the first assignment that we're going to do for this class. So I'll start by introducing myself. And the things that I want you guys to talk about in your introduction. So I should say the first assignment is not just to do introductions, but I want you guys to do a video introduction like I'm doing right now. Ideally you have a webcam. If you don't have a webcam and can't get access to one, you can post a picture and just write up a paragraph. But I would prefer if you guys did a video intro. Just makes for a better experience throughout the class. So here are the things that I want you guys to talk about in your intros, and I'll talk about them in a minute. Your name, obviously, which campus you're on, because this is an online class. People are from all over. What year you are, what's your major. I'm assuming it would be political science, or maybe you just have a passing fancy in political theory. In your opinion, what makes a good online class? I want to try to make this as good of a learning experience for everybody as possible. And then finally, something unique about yourself, right? Something interesting about yourself that goes beyond the whole major, major year, things like that. So, okay, so here goes for me, Eric Hodges. Year, well, I'm well past graduation. Actually, I finished my PhD in 2014. This is my second year teaching at USF, and I'm at the Sarasota campus. My major as an undergrad was political philosophy. So very similar. This political theory stuff is right down my alley. I love this stuff. I'm really excited about this class. My PhD was in government and international affairs, so straying a little bit from that, but not too far. What makes a good online class? I think it's what I said, right? I think there has to be, just in any class in general these days, right, there needs to be, in my opinion, there needs to be interaction between the professor and the student, right? And that's sort of the traditional model, right? The professor, conveys information or conveys knowledge to the student, right? But these days, I think it has to go several different ways, right? I think the professor conveys knowledge to the student has to convey knowledge to the professor, and the students share that knowledge. So that's the way I've designed this class, is to try to maximize those kinds of opportunities. For all its bad rap, right, online classes can be really great because you have a tremendous amount of flexibility, right? And you can kind of go at your own pace. And if you're in a lecture class and you miss something, you missed it, right? But in this class, it's a little bit slower, and if you miss something, you can go back and watch the video again, right? Or you can go to the discussion board and think about it before you actually answer the question. And, for people that are shyer in class, it presents an opportunity for them to engage in the material more. So there are some advantages to online classes. Something unique about myself. I think I might have gotten myself in trouble because I hadn't really thought about an answer to this question. Well, I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years. I guess that's not unique. But I did spend my 21st birthday on the Great Wall of China. So I think that's pretty unique. I grew up in a small town in Virginia, and I joined the Marines, and I was in China. And 21st birthday, standing on the Great Wall of China. So pretty sweet. Okay, so I want us to get us started, I want us to do a little thought experiment, right? And obviously, you guys can pause the recording if you want to when I finish up and actually think about it, or you can just think about it as I'm talking, right? And the thought experiment is this. Very famous political philosopher, probably the most famous American philosopher of the 20th century, is a guy named John Rawls. And John Rawls was a World War II veteran. He fought in World War II, and he was in the Pacific. And after the war was over, he sort of saw the carnage that had taken place at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And when he came back, he decided that he wanted to go to college and become a professor because he wanted that to never happen again, right? He never wanted to see the wreckage from World War II that he saw. So his idea was he was going to develop this great sort of theory of justice, and that's the name of his first book, is The Theory of Justice. But anyway, one of the things that John Rawls is most famous for is something called the original position. And the original position goes something like this. Imagine you're at the beginning of the world. Let's say, there's a small colony of people, right? And we've landed on Mars because right there they're making this trek to Mars, supposedly. People are going to Mars and they're never coming back because it's so far. But let's say that you're in that colony that's going to Mars, right? And you get there, and you guys have to sit down and you have to figure out how your little group is actually going to work. What's fair, what regulation should be in place to make sure everybody's safe. How do we make sure that decisions are made in a timely manner when they have to be? How do we make sure that we're protected from other people, right? All these sort of major purposes that government serves. So you have to figure these things out. So this is the original position. So you're in this position where there are no laws, and you have to sit down with your peers and come up with a system of government that you think is going to be the most fair. Now the wrinkle that Rawls puts into place is something called, and it's a principle called the veil of ignorance, right? And the veil of ignorance just means that you don't know who you are, right? So that's the one difference between these guys on Mars and the original position, is that you don't know whether you're a man or a woman, you don't know whether you're a majority, you don't know whether you're a minority, you don't know whether you're a criminal, you don't know whether you're a cop. You don't know anything about yourself, right? And the idea is that you're supposed to come up with a system of government that's going to be the most just for whoever you are. But that's the challenge, right? You don't know who you are. So because you don't know who you are, you're supposed to come up with principles, right? Principles that will govern the society where everybody gets sort of essentially equal justice, right? And that's the original position. So take a minute or so and think about what principles you would come up with if you were in the original position to get government going and make sure that you're treated fairly. Okay, so if you guys paused it, welcome back. If you didn't, here we go again. So Rawls essentially, I don't want to go too deep into Rawls' theory, but the most famous principle that came out of Rawls' original position is something called the difference principle, right? And essentially it's saying that when there's a great difference between two people in the eyes of justice, the system of justice should typically favor the person who is least privileged, right? So that's the difference principle. But anyway, so hopefully you guys came up with some interesting principles. If you guys want to, put those in a discussion or something like that, go for it. I'm not going to require you to do so, but interesting food for thought. Okay, so what's political theory, right? And how is political theory different than political science? Well, maybe we'll start with political science. Political science is a sort of a scientific investigation of the political institutions, like in the United States, it's looking at Congress, looking at the presidency, looking at the Supreme Court, how these things work, right? You're examining how they work. And you're looking at things like political behavior, why people behave the way they do given a certain amount of circumstances. You're going to be looking at things like legal precedent, the Constitution, the sort of the law, the legal structure that's put into place to make sure society runs, right? So these are sort of the things that you're going to be looking at as a political scientist. And I'm sure you guys have taken many political science courses. Political theory is a different animal, right? Because in political theory, we're not really saying, okay, well, how does the presidency work? We're not saying necessarily how does the Congress work. The most fundamental question in political theory is, what is the purpose of government, right? What is the purpose of politics? Why is it important in our everyday lives, right? And there are these theoretical questions that I have listed on the syllabus, right? Like, what is justice? What does justice mean? And justice, going back to Rawls, right, to the original position, justice is just making sure that everybody is treated fairly for the most part. And we're going to look at different conceptions of justice. And most famously, Plato's Republic lays out a very clear theory of justice, which many people say is wrong, but it didn't. He actually tried to put it in place in Syracuse, and it failed. The system of government failed miserably. But it's interesting to think about. What are my obligations, right? What are my obligations to other people? That's something that we often forget about in our system of government, right? That we have rights. We always say we're entitled to the freedom of speech, freedom of the press, things like that. But going beyond rights, you also have to understand, if they're rights, by the nature of rights, there are also corresponding duties among your other citizens and yourself to uphold those rights of other people, right? So it's understanding this sort of two-sided coin of rights and duties, right? And so once we get past sort of what's the purpose of government, right, we start looking at things like which form of government is best, right? Like I put the quote up there by Churchill that democracy is the worst form of government ever, comma, with the exception of every other government that's been tried before it. That's debatable, right? But Aristotle didn't think so, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, so is it a communist government? Is it a socialist government? And why, right? And we're also interested in moral questions, right? I mean, and that gets to sort of Churchill's first question, right? What kind of life do we wish to lead? What do we think is a good life, right? And once again, we'll talk about that when we talk about Aristotle, because he, had his system of politics was based upon his conception of what it meant to be happy or to be fulfilled, right? And once you have that understanding, Aristotle's idea is you need to understand human nature. And once you understand human nature and what it means to be a successful human being, you design your government to allow that to happen. And Aristotle actually believed that the city or the state was necessary for the individual to achieve happiness. Right? You can't achieve happiness individually. You have to do it working in the sort of the structures and the confines of society. His famous saying, right? Man is a political animal. So we'll be talking about that some as well. And so, yeah, I mean, and should governments make decisions based on moral claims? Right? There are several contrary opinions to that. We're going to talk about several. We're going to talk about in the Republic, we're going to talk about Plato's protagonist. His name was Thrasymachus, and he was essentially arguing that the just thing to do is for the strong to take from the weak, sort of the law of the jungle, right? And Machiavelli goes along similar lines. And then when we get to Hobbes, we're going to see that he says, look, that's just human nature. That's just the way it is. And even, the founders of our government, James Madison famously said that if men were angels, no government would be necessary. So you're starting with this conception that man is by nature a selfish creature. And if you start with that conception, then you build your government. And the way our government is constructed is to try to control for that, right? To try to maximize the benefits of man's selfish nature while simultaneously controlling the drawbacks of that. So all these questions, right? I could go on and on and on about all these interesting political theory questions, and we'll talk about them each week as we go through the course. But that should give you a general sense of what we're talking about when we're talking about political theory. All right, let me look at the syllabus real quick here. So there are no books for the class. I'm going to post all the readings will be online. They'll be under the files tab and course readings, and I'll just put the title of the reading up, right? So like next week is Lycurgus. We're looking at a passage from Plutarch's Lives on Lycurgus. I'll post it under the title name Lycurgus. So no books. We already talked about the format a little bit. It's an online Obviously, it's an online class, but I want to try to maximize the interaction as much as possible. So here's the way that a week will typically work in this class, right? On Tuesday, probably sometime around this time in the afternoon, 2:30, 3 o'clock, I will post a weekly video, right? And this week, I'm introducing the course, obviously. But the following weeks, I will be talking about I'll be introducing the topics for that week, but I'll also be talking about the discussions from last week, because that's really where the work of this course actually happens, or in the discussion boards, right? So Tuesday, I'll do a video. Wednesday, probably around lunchtime or something, I will post a discussion question. And the discussion question will be related to that week's readings, right? And so what I want you guys to do so if you look at the grading on this, you'll see that participation in these discussions is worth 30% of your credit, right? 30% of your final grade comes from these discussions, because I really want you guys to get engaged in this stuff, because I believe that's how you learn it, is through discussing this with other people, not just through reading it and hearing different perspectives and things like that. So to get a perfect participation grade, each week I'm going to give a participation grade of 0 to 10, right? 0 obviously is if you don't participate at all. A 10 would be if you respond to the question that I post within 24 hours. So if I posted Wednesday at noon, you respond to my initial question Thursday at noon. And when I say respond, I don't mean, like you're BSing your way through it, which is easy to do with some of these questions. But I want it to be a thoughtful response, and 2 to 3 paragraphs is what I'm looking for. So that's the first step, right? Within the first 24 hours, I want you to respond to my question. And also, I should say, I'm going to break you guys up into discussion groups. There are quite a few people in this class, so I'm going to have to break us down into several groups. And I'll put up those group assignments next week before the first discussion. I also want you to read your classmates' posts that they're posting as well, right? So we can get a sort of a sense of what we're all saying. And to that end, the second requirement for the participation grade is by Sunday at 5 p.m., I want you guys to have responded to at least one of your classmates, right, in sort of a thoughtful manner that shows that you've read and you kind of understand what this person is talking about, not just like, good job, good job. I actually want you guys to engage with what the person is saying, whether you think the ideas that they have any merit or not. And I should also say that I want this to be a respectful discussion. A lot of the topics that we're going to be dealing with could be contentious, right? But I think it's important that we try to remain civil as much as possible. So please, I implore you to remain civil. Also, this is something that has happened in the past, and because of that reason, when you're posting your first response, I'm going to make it the case that you have to actually write your response before you read the other students' responses, right? Because I've had cases in the past where students have essentially copied what somebody else has said and taken that down as their post. So don't do that. So to get a perfect grade, you respond to my discussion within 24 hours, and then you respond thoughtfully to another student by Sunday at 5. Do that. You're going to get a 10 every week. It's not hard. Your answers don't have to be brilliant. They don't have to be right. I just want to make sure that you guys are reading the material and that you're engaging in the discussion. So that's the participation point. Canvas. Yeah, I'm hoping you guys know how to use Canvas, because everything we do is going to be on Canvas pretty much. So beyond the participation grades, there are 4 quizzes. The quizzes are all open book, right? So they should be fairly easy. The first quiz will actually be this week. I will open up the quiz at 7 o'clock on Friday morning, and you will have until Saturday at midnight to complete the quiz. It'll be 10 questions. It'll be multiple choice, true, false. This week, the quiz will be on the syllabus, right? It's going to be the questions will be taken from content that is on the syllabus, because I want you guys to read the syllabus, right? But the other ones will be on material that we've covered between the last quiz and the current quiz, right? So everything we cover from this quiz up until the time when quiz 2 comes up, that's fair game for quiz 2. There'll be a midterm exam. It's going to be very similar in format to the quizzes. It's not open book. This is closed book. But it'll be multiple choice. It'll be true, false. And then at the end, there will be short essay questions, 2 to 3 paragraphs. So, and then there's also going to be a final paper, 6 to 8 pages, double space, sort of your typical length for this kind of paper. I will post the topic. I'll post probably a list of topics that you can choose from if you want to choose one of my topics. But also, if you want to choose your own topic, I say go for it. That's one of the that's one of the secrets to writing a really good paper, is writing about finding something that you're interested in and writing about that. So if you guys have your own ideas, I encourage you to write about those. I say on here, if you do decide to do that, please discuss the topic with me by November the 15th, just so I can say, well, okay, that's a good topic. You might want to think about these things, or I might say, find another topic. Yeah, and I'm also happy to read drafts. Just get them to me by November the 30th, excuse me. And I will post the assignment guidelines, obviously, for this, and a rubric on Canvas. So you'll have plenty of time to figure out, what I'm looking for. And I'll be talking about it more throughout the semester. So if you need to get in touch with me, the best way to do it is by email. I do have office hours on Monday and Wednesday in Sarasota. From 3:30 to 5, so please feel free. You can find my office number on the front of the syllabus. Please feel free to drop by at any time. I'm happy to talk to you. If you want to talk some other time, shoot me an email. We can set up an appointment. It'll be fine. Or if you can do it by email, that's great too. One thing I would say is that you'll see on our Canvas homepage, under the discussions, I have a discussion thread set up that says course questions. And if you have a question that relates to the course that you think other people might be interested in, post your question there first before emailing it to me, so other people can look at it and see if they have the same question. So if you do have a question, that's the first thing I would say, is go to the course questions link under the discussion tab. See if somebody else has asked the question, see if I've answered it. So, and then if that is not the case, post a question there. I check it every day, so I'll respond to that question and answer that. And then if that still doesn't answer your question, shoot me an email, and we'll work it out. Take a look at all the course policies. If you have any sort of accommodation, I know some people have already contacted me, but if you have accommodations, please let me know. Or if you have some sort of legitimate reason for missing, the midterm or something like that, please let me know as soon as possible. Generally, I don't accept late assignments unless you contact me beforehand, and if I do, there will be a penalty assessed based on how late it is. Okay, I think that's about it. You guys can just sort of you can check the syllabus, right, and you see the way that it's sort of set up. It's set up by week, and then there's the topic. Like next week, this is Sparta, right? I'm not gonna do it, but you guys are familiar with that saying for the movie 300. And I say that because we were looking at Lycurgus, and Lycurgus was the guy who set up the Spartan society, right? And he's like considered one of the great lawgivers because he traveled all around the ancient world and saw all the laws that these societies had in place, and he decided that these were certain laws that he was going to set up in Sparta, and he made Sparta into a very powerful, very powerful nation state. And another interesting thing about Lycurgus was that he set up the laws. He set the laws into place that made the most sense for the way that their society was structured. Right. So it goes to show that perhaps what's a good law in one society may not necessarily be a good law in another. Right. And that's what Lycurgus was trying to do. So yeah, I mean, we're kind of going chronologically, right? I mean, we're starting with Sparta, the beginning of Sparta, which is quite a while back, and then we're going up through Athens, Athenian Greece. We're talking about Plato, of course, and Aristotle, and then we're going to move on to Machiavelli, I think, and then we're going to get into sort of some of the medieval stuff with Hobbes and Locke, right? And social contract, another major theory we'll be talking about. We're going to be reading Rousseau for that. the last section is sort of on the democratic revolutions that happened and democracy, and then also just sort of a brief journey into what's sometimes known as the enemy, right? Communism, and figuring out, whether Marx was the devil that he's often portrayed to be, right? And so, anyway, that's essentially the way that the course is going to go. I'm looking forward to doing this semester. I love political theory, and I'm excited to discuss it with you guys. I hope you guys are too. And yeah, if you have any questions, post them on the course questions tab. I should say, also under the discussions, so for your intro assignment, I will post in the discussion assignments an intro, right? And I'll say post your intros here. So just respond to my initial post, post your video, hopefully if you've gotten it, or if you haven't gotten a video, post a picture where we can see your face, and tell us, answer the questions that I set out in the beginning. I'll write